We're rolling live, however, with a bit of technical difficulties. It seems this here session, Facebook will not permit me to stream on my Facebook page. It told me an unknown error has occurred, and I've been trying everything since the hour to get it operational, but it's just not allowing me. Who knows what that's all about? I will certainly look into it a bit further later on. Also, Twitter, same experience, giving me an error message that I cannot stream on my Twitter account. So what accounts are currently permitting me to stream? Well, I'm streaming on my YouTube channel and my Rumble channel. The conversation of the hour, my dear friends. Should I marry him or not? Should I marry him or not? In what regards and context are we speaking about? Well, within the realm of Christian faith, should a faithful Christian choose to pursue a commitment in marriage, the covenant of marriage, with a non-believer? Should a Christian marry a non-Christian? That kind of discussion. Those are the things we seek to talk about this hour. On my personal profile on Facebook, I posted a principle in regards to the wisdom of the scriptures. And it so plainly spoke, and I will, of course, let me just put it up on my desktop here so I can quote it verbatim. Facebook. Let's go here to Facebook, to my profile. Okay. Yesterday, well, about 13 hours ago, I posted, we must teach our children to marry faithful Christians. Faithful Christians. It is indeed a principle that I've been posting on social media since 2011 or 2012, along those lines. And every single instance in which this principle is shared, written in one form or another, it, of course, activates a panel thread of opinion, which is, of course, understandable. And it has various angles, some negative, others positive, some with concern, some with experience, and it holds value. It holds value to the greater bulk of the crowd seeking a more so better walk in this life as Christians. So let me just open up something here as well. I'm going to go to my YouTube channel just to see if we're rolling live there, because for some reason it did not permit me to go on my other streamers. Okay, yeah, we're streaming there. Excellent. Excellent. So if anything, please, dear friends, go to my YouTube channel, Stefan Ashmaye. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit that little notification bell. Give a thumbs up. Drop a comment. Share the link far and wide. There are others out there like you and I who will find value, which is beneficial to our faithful walk on this earth. And that way we can grow. I labor alongside the East Coast Church of Christ over here on the East Coast of Canada. And you can check out our .com, eastcoastchurchofchrist.com, or our Facebook page, East Coast Church of Christ. Okay? Moving forward also with this conversation, I'm going to share an article from a very good friend of mine. And within that article, we'll be able to recognize some numbers and some branches, if you will, to this discussion. All right, let's see here. I'm going to open that up on the screen. It is indeed, of course, understood that this topic also brings, at times, confrontational thoughts, arguments, some righteous arguments, meaning rightfully motivated and delivered arguments, and at times not so much. But we have to understand that is indeed the field in which we proclaim. And we only ask, bare minimum kind of stuff, that we be civil and mature, and that we have a humble heart, willing to learn, willing to hear each other out. Because ultimately, if our heart has been first given to our Lord and Master, Jesus Christ, then with Him as the focal point teacher that we follow, you and I can be reasonable together. We can reason together, and we are capable of gaining this education, a wisdom, an insight from the Scriptures and also from brethren who have been faithful in His church for decades, who have a value in their shepherding. They have value that we want to tap into. Why? Well, it's not to win an argument per se with the motive of I'm right and you're wrong. No, it's more along the lines of, hey, we're all just trying to make it to heaven here, and we want to help our kids make it to heaven, and we want to help our kids' make it to heaven. Right? And a very important part of life for many of us is marriage. It's marriage. Yeah, Sister Jackie, I tried to go live. I'm reading your comment here, I assume from my YouTube channel. I tried to go live like we've been doing, right, for years, where my application sends the stream to all our platforms. But for some reason, this morning, one attempt after the other, it kept giving me error messages from Facebook and Twitter. So Facebook and Twitter are not permitting me to stream live on this session. I don't know if it has to do with the Ecamm app that I have. Sometimes there are updates that come to fix these little things, or if it is indeed on X, Twitter, the Twitter platform and the Facebook platform. I don't know, but we'll roll with this as we have it. We are streaming live on my Rumble channel, Added Souls, and on my YouTube channel here, Stefan Ashmaye. So good to have you, Sister Jackie. Yeah, that's what's going on there. So yeah, we certainly want to have, or should seek to have, a healthy marriage. It is indeed a teaching within the confines of His doctrine, His Majesty, our Lord and Master, our King. And if we are capable, or willing, I should say, we are capable with the intellectual capabilities. We are capable. We should be willing to have clarity and know that perhaps more times than should have been practiced, we did not teach our children in the local assembly the scope of marriage and how serious it is. And not only from the positive side of marriage, the wonderful blessings of being united in a lifelong commitment with your best friend, but also the negative consequences when you are acting in haste and perhaps marrying an individual that is going to cause you a lot of pain, a lot of challenge and sorrow in your marriage. more often than not, sadly, resulting in separation or divorce and a great many other devastating turmoils. We, transparent and honest, sincere to the effort, are to have organized, time-filled, calendar-written periods and sessions of teaching to our children regarding marriage. And one of those very important departments of this conversation is, of course, who you are going to marry. What does he or she look like inwardly within the mind? And dare I even say, some attributes to he or she we are seeking to marry have description that may have lineage connection, ancestral connection, meaning look at their mother and father, their grandparents, look at the family structure. What is it cultivating? What is it producing? Is it an ancestry of turmoil and separation? What are the behavioral conditions of this family that you are marrying into? These are not bigoted conversations at all. We understand this to the even lesser secular level with anything and everything we do, pretty much. We should, anyways, as good stewards of our finances, take due diligence in purchasing a large item. We should not do so in any knee-jerk emotional reason or action. We take the time to make sure that we are utilizing God's blessings uprightly in a good stewardship. Like, we know this. This is something we operate with, or we should. We should be. How more important our souls and the individual we will be united with, two becoming one, for not only here on this earth, but eternally. It is the second most important covenant you will submit to. Second to the Christ and following him as our Lord and Master. Really? And we should embrace that responsibility with prudence. We should embrace that responsibility with prudence. I'm speaking introduction information to have our hearts set properly to the discussion at hand and moving forward. The world out there has made a mess of marriage. If we submit ourselves to the counsel of Hollywoodism for marriage advice and guidance, we are, as the scriptures would reveal, fools. We do not seek to be fools, we seek to be wise, even as just common folk with the common tongue. Okay? Scriptures that activate a proper thought, if you will, to the conversation of whom we ought to marry is certainly the Proverbs, the words of wisdom found in chapter 1, verses 2 and following. And I quote, "To know wisdom and instruction, to discern the sayings of understanding." Okay, to have wisdom, to have insight and instruction, to be able to discern right from wrong, or more so productive than lesser productivity in the sayings of understanding, to receive instruction in wise behavior, to become the recipient of this instruction with wisdom, wise behavior, behavioral uprightness, temperament that is Christ-like, okay? To give prudence to the naive. Our children are naive. They are innocent. And a great many times, some of us, growing up outside of Christ, are indeed afflicted with the ignorance of the secular realm. Okay, to give prudence to the naive. Be careful, son, with these people. Be careful with this employment, this career, these financial responsibilities. Be careful. Be mindful. Have prudence. Take precaution. Be cautious. Here are some of the concerns. Here are some of the hostilities. Here are some of the challenges. Here are some of the things that might cause issue. How to persevere. How to, at the very most, eliminate your life from the greater consequence of discouragement. To give prudence to the naive, to the youth knowledge and discretion. Verse 5, a wise man will hear and increase in the learning, and a man of understanding will acquire wise counsel. To understand a proverb and a figure, the words of the wise and their riddles. Verse 7, chapter 1, Proverbs. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. From my personal studies of the Bible since 2011, almost 13 years ago now, it's a very limited time. My wisdom is limited. Yet still, I've had the opportunity to learn things. And within the scope of things that, through His grace, I was permitted to learn, at times, most times, through deep sorrow, yet at other times through great joy, I have learned, along with a great many of my peers, that it is wise to marry a faithful Christian, more so than to marry a non-faithful Christian or non-believer altogether. Okay? That's some insight we've been able to recognize in life. God has blessed us with that insight. He blesses everyone with that insight if we're paying attention, if we're seeking to learn. Okay? So we have to keep this in our hearts moving forward, always within this discussion, because it does amplify emotional reaction. And emotion can be a good thing. God has blessed us with a conscience and emotion, but He also instructs us how to utilize it properly for the greater good of His kingdom. It is true that every time we speak the principle that Christians should marry Christians, or faithful Christians should marry faithful Christians, that in reaction some take offense. Well, that's not how we should be as Christians. We're not reaching people that way. Or we are assuming that the heart of the individual we are marrying who is a non-believer is not going to change. There are various arguments saying that you can and should marry a non-believer. Well, can we marry non-believers? Well, yes. Should we marry non-believers? In my humble assessment, my opinion, no. No, I think that's a bad deal. I think that doing so is going to land you into a lot of hardships. Is that always the case? Well, no. Many of us are the product of conversion marrying a loving heart. But you go ahead and you sit down and speak to our wives, and you allow them to share with you the deep sorrow and pain and agony and devastation that came from marrying us heathens. And you look at the numbers statistically. You'll recognize quite quickly that we are the exceptions to the rule. And we are eager to speak out our exception to the rule and say, well, I married a non-believer as she married me, and I was a non-believer and I converted. You see, we are joyful to express that blessing, and we should. All praise to God. We changed. But the individuals who were Christians marrying non-Christians, statistically in the majority, either being compromised and withdrawing from His grace, or a great many other sorrows of separation and divorce, turmoils, chaos in the household, disorderly. They don't speak out as much. And I've ministered to a great many of them. Well, maybe not a great many, but to a sizable number, allowing myself to gain experience, who don't speak out outwardly because of the pain, because of how deep the pain goes. So it is true that in this context, the exception to the rule is more so vocal, publicly, than you will find the majority in this discussion. So we are going to find ourselves, of course, reading an article together, and from there, we shall give our thoughts. From a very good friend of mine, Brother Steve Higginbotham, and let me put up the article on the screen here for you and I to read together. It's from his website, preachinghelp.org, the sermons and writings of Steve Higginbotham. And that, of course, is a picture of our dear brother, Steve Higginbotham. He was one of my teachers while I was being educated over at Southeast Institute of Biblical Studies. And he and I were capable of having a great many wonderful conversations. And he wrote an article called Unacceptable Statistics in regards, again, to Christians marrying non-Christians, Christians marrying faithful Christians. And let's read this together, you and I. Let me just bulk up here the article so the words are a bit bigger here. Command plus. Yeah, there, look at that. Bang. All right. The words are a bit more. The words are bigger. For those of us getting older, our eyes need bigger words. Okay, let's see what's going on here from our brother. Unacceptable statistics. When I was in college, this is Brother Steve Higginbotham, of course, speaking. When I was in college, Dr. Earl Edwards shared statistics with us concerning young people from the church in Wynne, Arkansas. I'm a French guy pronouncing English words. Please bear with me. Arkansas. These statistics covered a 20-year time span. Because of this class I had under Dr. Edwards, I decided that I too would keep some statistics similar to what Dr. Edwards had shared with us. So, when I began working with the South Green Street Church of Christ in 1989, I began keeping statistics. Interesting, isn't it? You want to know a thing? Begin to record a thing. Now, fast forward 22 years, okay? This past year, Brother Edwards and I were able to have lunch together in Denver, Colorado. At that time, I reminded him of the statistics he shared with us back in school, and I told him that because of this or his comments, I too had kept similar statistics where I had preached for 21 years. Brother Edwards then informed me that since the college class he had taught years ago, he had also gathered another set of statistics from another congregation that spanned a 20-year time period. Interesting. It takes time at times to learn things. And, we human beings, with this vapor of an existence, here today, gone tomorrow, we seem to want to know all knowledge in a matter of an hour. But sometimes patience, due diligence, suffering long, accumulating the data allows us to, decades later, have a very valuable, tangible evidence to share with our brethren. Why? Again, to the very simple formula, we all are trying to make it to heaven faithfully. The article continues. So we shared our information with each other in hopes that we can help people see that what is happening is not an isolated anomaly, but rather a pattern which needs to be broken. Got to break the chain. Here is what we found. The first study was done by Bobby Key and the church in Miami, Oklahoma. His survey covered 20 years, from 1958 to 1977. And here are his results. Friends, please consider subscribing to the channel, giving us a thumbs up, hit that notification bell, share the link far and wide. Others out there in the church might find some value here that would contribute to their faithful walk. Here are his results. 79 youth married non-Christians, and 57 of them had left the faith. 72%. 79 youth married non-Christians, and 57 of them had left the faith. These are human beings. These are our children. Okay? 20 of the 57 who had married non-Christians had divorced, 35%. 20 of the 57. These are of the 57 who withdrew themselves from the location of spiritual security. Number next. 14 of the 79 who had married non-Christians had helped to convert their mates, 17%. Oh, it happens. But are we seeing a pattern of the number? Even Jesus utilized numeric teaching. No? Oh yeah, he did. Certainly. What about the sower and the seeds? What about those numbers? What about the gate? The broad gate, the narrow gate? Those are numbers. How many were on the ark in the age of Noah? Those are numbers. Okay, number next. 64 youth married Christians, and only 5 of them had left the faith. 7%. 64 youth married Christians, and only 5 of them had left the faith. There's a difference there, isn't there? Number last. 2 of the 64 who had married Christians had divorced. 3%. That interesting? Okay, so this is one location during a period of time in which the data was accumulated, and now the evidence, of course, can be on display in an honorable court of law. This is what's going on. So from Oklahoma, Miami, Oklahoma, from 58 to 77, these are the numbers that have been accumulated. Now, the second study, the article continues, was done by Gene Caterton, an elder of the Bridges Street congregation in Wine, Arkansas, where Brother Edwards preached. This survey also covered 20 years from 62 to 81. Here are his results. Friends, because this stream was not permitted to be on our Facebook platform, please consider sharing this YouTube link on Facebook or on other social media platforms you peruse. I believe our brethren need to hear this kind of information and engage this kind of information. Here are the results of this second study. 76 youth married non-Christians, and 61 of them had left the faith. That's 80%. In a span of 20 years. 80%. These sorts of numbers in any department of secular life and experience would not be tolerated. Would not be tolerated. If these were the numbers within the business is going down. It's going bankrupt. It's closing its doors. People are getting fired. If the car salesman were to sell you a vehicle with this information, you wouldn't purchase the vehicle. You wouldn't purchase the vehicle. You wouldn't purchase anything with those numbers in the negative. You and I know that. You and I know that. It's not even comparable in the amount of value when we are speaking about our children's souls and their life on this earth compared to materialistic accumulation. So we are speaking of some pretty serious stuff here. 76 youth married non-Christians, and 61 of them had left the faith, 80%. Number 2, 23 of the 67 who married non-Christians were divorced, 34%. 34%. The other had 35, 34. You see the similarities here from two different locations here, two different time frames. Number next, 11 of the 76 who married non-Christians have helped to convert their mates, 14%. 28 youth married Christians, and only 4 had left the faith, 14%. Number last, 4 of the 28 who married Christians had divorced, 14%. Are we beginning to see a pattern here? Are we beginning to see an image of concern? I believe so. The third study was done by myself, Steve Higginbotham, at the South Green Street congregation in Glasgow, Kentucky, covering 21 years from 1989 to 2010. Here are my results. 76 youth married non-Christians, and 57 of them had left the faith, 75%. That's interesting, isn't it? 3 different locations, historical timelines, with similar numbers. 76 youth, 76 youth, 79 youth. 57 out of the 79 left. 61 out of the 76 left. And here, 57 out of the 76 left. That's alarming. That's alarming. Number next, 24 of the 76 who married non-Christians have divorced, 32%. 4 of the 76 who married non-Christians have helped to convert their mates, 5%. The exception to the rule. And again, as I was sharing my experience from 2011 to now, the 5% are very quick. We are very quick to publicly express the blessing of having married a loving individual who converted us to Jesus Christ. But you see the 75%, the 80% of those who did not and fell in deep sorrow and divorce and all sorts of other turmoils, well, they are more silent about it. Why? Because it hurts. We're just trying to heal from it and stay away from it, and we don't want to be reminded about it. However, it is my kind plea, my urging to you all, please don't remain silent. Don't take the pain you've gone through in vain. Utilize it to teach the next generation. Don't marry non-believers, non-faithful Christians. Don't do it. Is it true that you can marry a faithful Christian who throughout the duration of your time together chooses to change from being faithful and becomes a non-faithful Christian and causes much pain in the marriage? Well, of course. But statistically, you have a greater chance and hope of a healthy union than from the get-go entering into a statistical deficit. Number next, 4 of the 76 who married non-Christians have helped to convert their mates. It's a small number. 13 youth married Christians, and only 3 have left the faith. 23%. Number last, 3 of the 13 who married Christians have divorced. 23%. So what we have here is 3 different statistical data is accumulated from various locations, various geographical locations and time frames, which give us to a reasonable measurement the truth regarding marrying a faithful Christian or marrying a non-believer or a non-faithful Christian. 3 studies. These statistics, the article continues, these statistics come from Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Kentucky, and span from 1958 to 2010. These statistics haven't undergone any statistical rigors, so you can argue with their representative results if you want. However, I don't think they are atypical of what is happening across our brotherhood. You can dismiss them as anecdotal if you wish, but I think it's more than that. Our brother Steve Higginbotham is wise to say so. Notice how similar the results were from each congregation. And most importantly, so what do we learn? It's one thing. It's a wisdom to discern and recognize the problem. But to only recognize the problem, expose it, bring awareness to it, void of a remedy, is indeed a problem in of itself. So we must see the problem and find the solution. So what do we learn? What have we learned? Number 1, we learned that, parentheses, at least from these 3 studies, our youth are increasingly marrying non-Christians, 55%, 73%, 85% respectively. It is a forecast we can see. Jesus himself says, well, you can tell the weather. You look up in the sky and you can see the colors, the clouds, the rain, you can forecast when it comes to the weather. Why can't you read the sign of this time? We're toe-stepping on ourselves, aren't we? We have to. At times we have to. We build each other up. We edify each other. We are a healthy and growing, loving assembly. But it's all for naught if we're just one generation in and the next to fall, close the doors. Right? We learned that, at least from these 3 studies, our youth are increasingly marrying non-Christians. Number 2, we also see that the vast majority of our youth who marry non-Christians leave the faith. 72%, 80%, 75% respectively. That's not to be taken lightly. We're speaking about human souls, our children's souls, eternally. We are speaking about life and death. Oh, we'll just let them sow their wild oats. We turned out okay, didn't we? Half of us didn't make it. Half of us died. And the other half of us, we wake up screaming in the middle of the night with trauma. We've been through stuff. We don't want our children to go through that stuff. No. Listen, this is the time to change. Break the chain. Furthermore, we find that very few who marry non-Christians are ever able to convert their spouses. 17%, 14%, 5%. And finally, we learned that these statistics bear out exactly what one would expect them to bear out. 1 Corinthians 15:33. Evil company corrupts good habits. If you marry an immoral individual, you're going to have a hard time. You're going to have a hard time. Think of it. What about the kids? What if you don't want the kids to go to church? What if you don't want the kids to learn about Jesus? What if he's teaching the kids to hate Jesus? What are you going to do? You think you may have a sincere and loving heart and a thoughtful mind saying, well, people change and I see the good in him and he might change and the gospel is strong enough to change him. And I know you mean well. I really do. I know you mean well, sincerely. But you're naive. You're naive. And what does the proverb say in regards to the naive? The Proverbs, the wisdom is to give prudence to the naive. We're giving you prudence. Don't go that path. Try to convert him, certainly, but don't marry him. Don't marry him. When 2 become 1, that's a commitment, and that is a strong bond. Evangelism is not, hey, let's get married and try to convert people. Or let me reword that this way. It's not an evangelistic tool, marriage. It's not an evangelistic tool. It's not like, well, what are our evangelistic efforts this week? Well, Brother Smith, we have door knocking on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and on Thursday, we're just going to marry a whole bunch of non-believers and try to convert them, and then we'll have a gospel weekend. It's not an evangelistic tool, marriage. It's a lifelong commitment. I know you sincerely think that, well, I love him, Mom, and I'll marry him. I'll change him towards it. Everything's stacked against you. Don't be naive. You wouldn't subscribe to those numbers in any other facet of life. Why on earth would we do it with marriage, which holds eternal consequences? Don't do it. Don't do it. Mothers, fathers, preachers, elders, Bible class teachers, the time to speak up is now. I mean, how far must we flirt with this decay? It's time to change now. It's time to do what we have to do now. Far too many have been and are being destroyed by their choices of a spouse. Here, with the autonomy of his local body, the East Coast Church of Christ. We're on the East Coast. This church belongs to Jesus Christ. That's why it's called the East Coast Church of Christ. We are autonomous. We are a healthy and growing family. We love each other dearly. We are thoughtful towards one another. It is a blessing, truly. One that I pray God will permit me to live and minister to till my dying day. We are teaching our children to marry faithful Christians and to think of this serious covenant at their very young age, because the world out there is teaching them something quite different. Now, to answer the question, is it a sin? Is it an act of lawlessness for a Christian to marry a non-Christian? That's an important question, and I know many seek to corner us with an answer for it. Case per case is what must be applicable to answering that question. From one case to the next, from one account to the next. Is there a broad brush? I would, in my opinion, say, yes, there is a broad brush. What is it? No, it is not an inherent sin if you are a Christian who marries a non-Christian. It is not an inherently given sin in which you are damned upon marrying a non-Christian. However, is it truly seeking his kingdom first? Is it perhaps flirting with various violations of his wisdom? Yeah, it is. It's not a wise decision at all. You're looking for trouble. Statistically so, numerically so. Can it be, though, at times even within the sphere of a lawless act? I believe so. I believe there are cases and accounts where Christians marry a non-Christian, and it is an act of lawlessness. That is the truth. Far too many have been and are being destroyed by their choice of a spouse. We've seen it. I've seen it. In my family, in my friends, I've seen it. We've witnessed it. I was blessed to have married a very faithful and loving individual, my best friend. And we have quickly learned throughout the years, my wife and I, that we are quite unique and in the growing minority of a well-functioning marriage. Not perfect, filled with all of life's challenges, ups and downs, mistakes, right? How do they say that now? It's left my mind. Goods and bads, right? Trial and error. There it is. I knew it would come to me within the many files of my mind. Trial and error. Many of those moments. But healthy, loving, united. Nothing will destroy us, because we are in Christ within the security of his eternal salvation, and we are faithful to one another. Nothing will separate us but death. And it's just for a brief moment. Then we'll get to be together forever in heaven. We want our children to have that. We want our children to know that love. To be the example and saying, look, what you are seeking, the scriptures reveal its wisdom. Faithful Christians marry faithful Christians. The article continues from our dear friend, Brother Steve Higginbotham. Far too many have been and are being destroyed by their choice of a spouse. What would seem to be the case, a Christian marrying a non-Christian would have a difficult time remaining faithful, is the case. It just is the case. But are we teaching our young people this truth? Well, I know we are here as the East Coast Church of Christ, We are. And we are going to continue to cultivate the truth of this matter. We, of course, encourage all local assemblies to do their part to teach these things. Are we afraid to preach on the dangers of religiously mixed marriages for fear of reprisals, especially since so many are doing this? Yeah, sometimes, it's tempting to fall into cowardice. Elderships may say, let's not touch that discussion. It just brings division. Well, there is such a thing as righteous division, by the way. Not all division is evil. Now, there is evil division. We know it. We've experienced it. We know what it looks like, and we don't want that. But there is righteous division. And at times there are things we have to speak about that are, well, perhaps tabooed or controversial, right? We should not be tempted into cowardice and saying we'll all get along if we just don't talk about anything. Sadly, that seems to contaminate local assemblies. Everything's fine. We're doing well. But the congregation is living in sin and is quite ignorant of everything. Yeah, but we're doing well. I don't know about that. Personally, after seeing the above statistics, I'm afraid not to warn of this danger. Like, how can you know this and remain silent and not address it? And that says a lot about a brother or sister's heart. If they can go through a session like this, you and I together, and you leave this session saying, nah, it's all rubbish. I mean, that's a big red flag for me, looking at your faith saying, wow, like, I don't think that's healthy. I don't think that's productive. I don't think that's good. No, we should leave this session passionately saying, what can we do more so in our local assembly to organize and to have delivered to our children's minds, their lives, this prudency, these precautions. Are we more interested in our children being viewed as normal, quote unquote normal, by their peers, that we have allowed them to date whomever they wish? Well, if we have them different than the rest, then the rest will ridicule them for being different. We can't allow that. They have to be popular. They have to be, quote unquote, winning. Is that the cause of our idleness? Rather than teaching them to date only those who have a common faith in God and love for His kingdom? Like it truly is an either or. I've told my children I will never enforce on you. I will never tell you who you can marry. Never. But I will tell you who you can date. Do we have an agreement? Yes, Daddy. Thank you. Have we failed to teach our children one of the most important facets of marriage? Well, I think we can say we've dropped the ball, at the very least, on a great many occasions. Do our young people understand that marriage is more than a partnership that keeps one from being alone at night? But it is a relationship that is intended to help one reach his home in heaven? Like, do we teach the seriousness of this commitment? Some brethren, they are so toxic in their union, it's only basically sharing board. She pays rent with me. We have business associations, We fall through with the agreement we signed. We're roommates. We both pay the rent. What an empty and bland union. We want our children to grow up and discern the proper candidate first and foremost. And therein a session will be made for that very angle in of itself. It deserves that honor. Our children must be instructed with the prudence necessary for them to discern a proper candidate for marriage and one who is not. Okay? That's important. Do our young people understand that marriage is more than a partnership that keeps one from being alone at night, but it is a relationship that is intended to help one reach his home in heaven? A healthy marriage, two faithful Christians will indeed help each other make it to heaven. It's better. It's better, okay, to do it that way. Friends, Brother Steve says, friends, I'm not saying it's a sin to marry a non-Christian. I'm not even saying that we need to teach our children to marry Christians. Parentheses, I know some of who wear the name Christian that I wouldn't want my children to marry. And a bit of an excursion to that point, if I may. Many individuals call themselves Christians, and they ain't Christians. Many of them are Christians, but they ain't faithful Christians. Many congregations have a sign outside that says Church of Christ, but you walk in there and you quickly find out that these people do not belong to Christ. So it takes a bit more study and insight, doesn't it? It takes a bit more legwork. Christianity is an educated religion, despite what they claim out there in the ocean of error. We've been given the ingenuity of our faculties to utilize for the greater good of the kingdom. And wouldn't you know it, we can do so simultaneously, having our children blessed with a healthy marriage. With a healthy marriage. The article continues, I'm saying that the marriage relationship has an undeniable influence on one's relationship with God. Apart from one's decision to become a Christian, one will not make a more important decision than that of choosing a spouse. Question: are we equipping our young people to make that decision? Very good question, Brother Higginbotham. P.S. If you have any statistics or anecdotal comments of your own, please share them in the comments section. That was an article from our friend Steve Higginbotham over at preachinghelp.org, the sermons and writings of Steve Higginbotham. And that brings, of course, also a conclusion to our session. From what the scriptures teach, from what has been accumulated from brethren, yeah, it is very wise for Christians to marry faithful Christians, and we ought to teach it to our children. Please subscribe to the channel, follow, like, give a comment, hit that notification bell, follow along. We go live from Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. Atlantic Daylight Time. Each day has a different theme. Look at the show notes, look at the different days. Maybe all of that interests you, maybe only some days, whatever. Share this on all platforms. Allow us to grow together as Christians, seeking to be productive in our local assemblies, bringing this kind of information forward. If you find value, take this link for this session and share it in private messages, maybe Messenger, or various other locations you may be using, WhatsApp, Telegram, whatever. It is a non-hostile approach. It is balanced and fair. I do pray so. And God be praised. Truly. He loves us. He has great compassion for us. He has given us all the tools necessary to be successful in Him. We are the ones that cause a great many problems in our lives. And one of them, sadly, is within marriage. But that doesn't need to be the case. Wouldn't we rather have a healthy congregation, active with the passion of Christ within their hearts to marry healthy healthy Christians. And wouldn't it be better? Like, wouldn't it be more joyful to be proclaiming the good news or sharing with our brethren who have healthy marriages than constantly having to address a divorce or a devastation within a marriage or a chaos or a... We always have to proclaim the truth regarding marriage, the good, the bad, the ugly. But man, wouldn't it be better that if we start now, then in another 10, 20 years from now, the congregation statistically has changed and the majority are in healthy, wonderful, loving marriages, instead of the constant ministry to now an ocean of individuals who are living in separation and consequence. And it's time for those of us who have gone through those consequences and separations to take that information, that wisdom that came at great sorrow, and utilize it and proclaim it and teach it as guidance and instruction, as prudence to our youth. Say, hey, listen, I messed up. I made some very bad decisions regarding marriage, and I'm here to tell you, don't do those same mistakes. Okay? It leads to a lot of pain. Let's do that. Okay, that is an end for this session. Friends, stay focused, stay positive. You are loved. You are appreciated. To all my supporters, man, listen, you are on our list. We pray for you every day. You help us to be motivated. You expedite the work. And there's always room for those of you who are not supporting yet. If you are willing and able, please consider it. It supports the Added Souls ministry through the Maye family as we labor along with this mission, the East Coast Church of Christ. Helps us put food on the table, have food, shelter, and clothing. It helps us remain focused on the priority of proclaiming and teaching and leading and all that kind of good stuff. You can sign up to addedsouls.locals.com. You can sign up over there and you can support monthly. You can also send a gift through PayPal, addedsouls@gmail.com. There's also a physical address. You reach out to me. We can have a video chat, a phone call, or an email exchange. All of these, of course, are available to you. All right. Have yourself a wonderful weekend. Stay safe. And Lord willing, we'll see each other again soon. All right? Peace out.